our podcast. My name's Izzy.
I'm Emily, and today we're going to be talking about the food pyramid and the flip that's happened.
Yeah. Before we do that, I just want to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm the guest today. My name is Dr. Izzy. I'm a pediatric and pregnancy specialist, and I work really closely with a lot of nutritionists in the chiropractic field. And I'm really excited to be here today. Before we dive more into the new food pyramid, to better understand that, we got to look at the history of how we got it in the first place. And really, all that started in about 1916, which was the birth of how to select food, is what it was called. And it was shaped like a wheel. And it basically established a guidance based on household measures of food and focused on like protective foods, is what it's called. And it was just like a baseline of how people should be eating. And it was like a primitive version of our food pyramid today.
And then next, we're going to jump to the 1940s, where we noticed the first change in the food groups that are recommended for eating. It started to have an introduction in the daily servings for all seven food groups that we should be consuming, and actually gave numbers and limits and serving sizes, which was a first.
Yeah, and then after that, we transitioned between 1956 and 1970. And this was called Food for Fitness, a daily food guide. And this had a more weight loss based approach than the previous charts that we'd seen, which focused a lot more on like nutrients and adequate like nutrition and stuff like that. And this one had no guidance on fat and sugar, which was interesting.
However, in 1979, they corrected the fact that they had no guidance on fats, sweets, added sweets, and alcohol on their charts. And this is about the time where we're starting to notice those added sugars into our processed foods here. And so they've added guidelines to minimally have minimal intake of those fats, those sweeter foods, the added sweets, and alcohol.
Yeah. And then 1984, we start to see a more total diet approach. And it has the five food groups, and this was heavily influenced by the dairy and meat industry, especially because at the time the government was subsidizing the dairy industry, and they had more dairy than they knew what to do with. So they decided that the American diet needed to have more dairy and more meat in it. That way, the government had something to do with all this dairy. And we see that start to creep in by just how big the food wheel portion, that is the cheese, milk, and yogurt portion, takes over.
And in 1992, based off of what Izzy covered in 1984, the diet approach led to the visualization of a food pyramid. So instead of just talking about the food, they actually gave us a full pyramid and spaced things out to see how much we should be eating and in what order. And with this visualization, it shows grain as the foundation of our diet, which kicks us off into the diets that we're used to in this day and age as being heavy carbs, low protein, and ideally you have some fruits and veggies in there, but in all reality, it's also been minimal fruits and veggies as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the government decided that like they liked this pyramid shape and they were going to keep going with it, but they completely redesigned it for 2005. And this is where the My Pyramid food guidance system, steps to a healthier you system came into effect. And it's shown as a regular pyramid with triangles coming down instead of a stacked pyramid like the ones from 1992. And there's also an illustration of stairs going up the side, which kind of represents bringing in physical activity into overall health and showing the importance that physical activity plays on diet as well. The caloric levels were added, and they kept it a very simple illustration, including a very thin band to show that we want to reduce our fats, we want to reduce our like oils and stuff like that in our diet as well. In 2011, they also changed from the food pyramid into the My Plate that many of us have seen, like in the cafeteria growing up and stuff like that. And this was created around when Michelle Obama um, reorganized how we eat our cafeteria lunch at school. So I don't know if everyone remembers, like, suddenly there were baked chips and like more vegetable options. The My Plate depicts a plate with a cup of dairy on the side that shows just about how much each category should take up your plate. And this was a way to help, especially young children, work on portion control as they grew up and like have a guideline for like how they should be eating.
And like you said, I remember that My Plate posted everywhere throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. It's like each portion and like you knew which one was which. And yeah, that My Plate was from 2005 really up into 2026. And it was most recently that they revamped the food pyramid. They brought the pyramid back, but not only did they bring the pyramid back, they flipped it. And they have put grains being something that you consume minimally now, and that's more at the top of the smaller part of their pyramid. And then they have proteins and veggies and fruits at that base of your pyramid. They have increased the amount of protein we should intake based on the guidelines by 50 to 100% already. And they have also touched base with increasing your fats. And while saturated fats are linked to some chronic health conditions, they also touch base of the importance of having those building blocks in your diet and having that whole food approach.
Yeah, definitely. These more recent changes definitely highlight, as a society, the shift that people have been making away from processed foods. People have been realizing like just how detrimental they can be to health and transitioning into a more whole foods diet. And the government acknowledging that is very interesting because in the past it's been very grain heavy, it's been very like processed, but like they chemically decide to make it healthy, if that makes sense. Like stripping away like certain fats and certain vitamins from different products to try to artificially create whole foods. When in reality, people are realizing, and this has been the trend, that nothing beats just a straight whole foods diet. There's no amount of human intervention that we can have that will beat just eating a vegetable and a protein and a whole grain.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that I thought was just so fascinating with this new change is one of the recommendations when it comes to added sugars is avoiding kids having added sugars until the age of 10. And I thought that was absolutely incredible. And that's focusing on them eating whole foods, letting their body intake the natural foods that they're used to, and using those building blocks for the big growth periods that they're about to be going through. And I'm really curious to see how these guidelines, the change in these guidelines, are going to impact what we see as the future in our health.
Yeah, I mean, we have really no way of telling where this will take us. I feel like the upside down food pyramid was a very primitive approach to reorganizing this whole food system, but it was definitely a first step and a step that most people may see as a step in the right direction. And um, it's interesting to see like how the government is gonna transition through this. As you can see, there's been many iterations of the My Plate, the food pyramid, the food wheel, and no one knows what's going to come next. Every year, people decide this is healthy, and then 5 years later, they're like, I can't believe we did that. That was horrible for us. So there's really no telling where our nutritional knowledge will take us. And I think it's important to maintain an open mind and to just kind of take it as it comes and see what happens.
Yeah, Izzy, you summed that up so well. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on our podcast today, and until next time.
Bye.